Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a good day or night. My name is Chenge, and I am wishing you the warmest welcome to a new perspective, a podcast that talks about gender based violence. Today, we will be joined by our guest Julia, and we'll take a closer look at the role of European institutions, how laws, directives, and international commitments shape the protection of women and girls across the continent. We'll also talk about the Istanbul Convention, the EU Directive 2024 on combating gender based violence, and the right to sexual and reproductive health. Now, before we dive into specific laws and conventions, let's take a step back. At a broader level, what is the role of the European Union and other European institutions in combating gender based violence?
Hi, Chenge. Before we start, I want to thank all of you for the invitation. It's such a great opportunity for me to be part of this inspiring and enriching project. And, I really love to work with you. Now, back to us. Since gender based violence is one of the most systematic and common violation of human rights worldwide, direct and targeted action from the European Union and European institutions is necessary. In fact, the community legal order works on several fronts to fight against this issue, to protect the victims of these reprehensible crimes and to punish the perpetrators. European Union springs into action through legislation, fundings, research, promotion of good practices, international cooperation, awareness campaigns, and youth policies. This fight is crucial for guaranteeing the ultimate scope of European Union, that is, promoting peace, stability, and the well-being of the European Union citizens. During our conversation, we will dive into several legal sources, specific measures for the empowerment of women, and projects that the European Union implemented. Regarding European institutions, I want to mention the European Commission, which is the main executive body of the European Union. Let's look at some of the most important actions the European Commission undertook over the past years. The European Commission developed the European Union Youth Strategy, part of the dialogue between associations and policymakers. It's the framework for the European Union Youth Policy Cooperation for 2019-2027. Basically, this is the means through which European Union promotes participation in democratic life, active citizenship, and civic engagement of young people. European Union bets and invests in young people, promotes their education, and aspires to develop quality youth work. During the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the European Commission adopted the Gender Equality Strategy for 2020-2025, which provides for different measures aimed at putting an end to violence against women and domestic violence, and confirms the European Union commitment in this battle. It's in this area that the Directive 1385 was conceived. The Member States had to ratify it by June 17th, 2024, but we will come back to this topic later. In March of 2025, the Commission adopted the Roadmap for Women's Rights with a long term vision for achieving gender equality, based on core principles such as freedom from gender based violence, set out in the Declaration of Principles for a Gender Equal Society.
Why is it important that this issue is addressed not only at the national level, but also through a coordinated European approach?
Because coordination between levels, in this case national and community law, is crucial for a positive and concrete outcome in this complex fight. It's important to promote the good practice exchange amongst different member states and to establish inside the European Union a common, coordinated, direct, and efficient action in combating gender based violence.
Let's get deeper. The Istanbul Convention is often mentioned as a cornerstone document in the fight against gender based violence. Could you explain what it is and why it's such a crucial instrument for Europe? And if possible, could you also comment on how its implementation has been developing in Italy, where there has recently been public debate and controversy around its application and its meaning?
Of course, that's a really good question. The Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, better known as Istanbul Convention, entered into force in April 2014 and was signed by European Union in June 2017, but ratified and adopted later in 2023. Its importance lies in the awareness about the structural nature of the issue and in the binding nature towards the contracting countries of its principles, whose solid fulfillment at national level is guaranteed through a specific control mechanism. In this way, an effective legal protection of the rights at stake is ensured. What's interesting is that this document is the first internationally legally binding instrument that provides a comprehensive regulatory framework. in the fight against all forms of violence, including domestic, sexual, and psychological work. It is considered the cornerstone document in this field for several reasons. It is the first international document to contain a definition of gender and to constitute as crime conducts like female genitals mutilation, stalking, forced marriage, forced abortion, and forced sterilization. The most important, as mentioned, is the fact that the Convention recognizes gender based violence as a violation of human rights and a form of discrimination, and assigns legal responsibility to the states formally consented to be bound by it. The Convention pinpoints legal and strategic global measures to stop this kind of violence and to protect and assist the victims. We are talking about data collection, awareness raising campaigns, support services, and so on. Furthermore, the Convention faces the dimension of the gender based violence in the field of asylum and migration. Talking about the implementation of the Convention in our country, it's not been easy since there is still a lot of debate about its application and meaning. In 2020, GREVIO, which stands for Group of Experts on Action Against Women, against Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, published a report about the status of application of the Convention in Italy, suggesting the path to pursue to reach an effective implementation. GREVIO, which is an independent organism, controls the correct and real application of the Convention by the signatory states and, through the final investigation report, informs them about the consequent remarks. For example, regarding our country, in the report, GREVIO expressed appreciation for the innovations introduced in the national legislation, such as the introduction into the penal code of the crime of stalking in 2009, also concerns about the practical implementation of the Convention, whose violation could expose Italy to a condemnation by the European Court of Human Rights. Revio observed several issues in the implementation due to the persistence of stereotypes, which leads to secondary victimization in courtrooms and underestimation of the phenomenon. Unfortunately, I think there's still a lot to do since Italy is characterized by lack of resources and inability of the state to prevent these kinds of conducts and to consider them expression of gender-based violence, which does nothing but fuel mistrust in the institutions.
This brings us to a more recent development, the EU Directive 2024 on gender based violence. What are its main goals and how does it change things for member states?
Well, after a long and debated path, in May 2024, the European Union Parliament and the Council adopted the Directive 1385 on combating violence against women and domestic violence. The importance of the source lies in the fact that it's an organic document aimed specifically at fighting this structural issue, with the intention of considering specific conducts a criminal offense and strengthening the protection of the victims. Before the adoption of this directive, the matter was regulated by several sources. This is the first legislative act of European Union regarding violence against women, and it's going to harmonize sanctions and prescription terms of the criminal offenses. Thanks to this directive, the European Union aspires to set a minimum level of protection. As mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, Cheng, this directive has been conceived in the field of the gender equality strategy, aimed at ensuring gender equality in all areas of competence of the European Union. This directive plays a central role in the regulation of the topic and the fighting of the issue, since the Istanbul Convention entered into force in the European Union only in 2023. Moreover, before adopting the directive, there was a regulatory gap in the European legislation. In fact, this is the first document expressly dedicated to women's protection and not only to victims, aimed at eliminating disparities between men and women also by fighting gender based violence and discrimination. The directive aspires to harmonize the regulation of the member states regarding the protection of women victims of violence, establishing common minimum standards for fighting and prevention across the European Union. States were obliged to ratify the directive and adjust their national legislation to its indications by introducing sanctions and implement concrete measures.
Finally, beyond laws and directives, how can European institutions and we as citizens ensure real progress in ending gender based violence?
I strongly believe that the solution to this problem exists, and it's our responsibility and civic duty as new generations to investigate the roots of the issue and uproot it. Primary role must be attributed to awareness and education, and by that I do not mean just school education. I think that in a materialist and capitalist society like ours, we must start from the basics that is, teaching love, respect, tolerance, active listening, nonviolent communication, free emotions, and equality. These values that should be infused at a young age at home are essential for building equal and inclusive relationships, thus leading to the subversion of traditionally imposed gender roles. We must raise aware and tolerant citizens so that we can create a fertile ground for a respectful society, leave and promise to future generations a better environment. And this is where institutions must come into play with a coordinated action and with the implementation of resources and instruments. The European Union has the tools and it gives us the possibility to do our part. We just need to learn how to get means through which projects can be carried out. This is, for example, the case of the project Seminiamo Parità, created by Mima Dreams, Cilento Youth Union, Mobility Opportunities Up Body, and APG Italy, which I had the pleasure of participating in. Thanks to this Erasmus Plus project, I had the possibility to learn more about European Union, its functioning, and its youth policies, and to learn many more things about gender-based violence and its possible prevention strategies. During the project, we undertook debates, role plays, we took interviews, wrote a policy paper, we did something concrete. And this is what we need now concrete action. Education plays a central role in promoting active citizenship and youth policies, self determination, development of critical thinking of young people who are game changers and the future of the country. We must absolutely raise our voice and make ourselves heard loud and clear. Self consciousness, solidarity, overcoming patriarchal social constructs inherent in our reality are key instruments, the heart for promoting the individual and collective empowerment, with special attention to women and all other marginalized subjectivities. But we can't be alone. The commitment of the civil society must be assisted by institutions, administrations, public bodies, such as schools and universities, through a transversal approach. The collaboration of these subjects is the result of the construction of a fully participatory democracy that respects the founding principles of our Constitution and the European Union. We can affirm for the fight against gender based violence to become effective and lead to an eradication of the patriarchal system, the institutional action must be guided by a genuinely inclusive vision, firmly anchored in the values of anti fascism, non discrimination, and the promotion of fundamental rights. I conclude by quoting a strong and exhaustive sentence from Barack Obama. I learned that change only happens when ordinary people get involved and they get engaged and they come together to demand it. Once again, thank you so much for letting me take this space, express myself freely on a topic that I care for trusting me and making me part of such an interesting, enriching, inspiring project. It's been a wonderful way to learn more, to put myself out there, and who knows, to plant a small seed for a better society.
Thank you so much for listening, and a special thanks to our guest Julia for helping us dive deeper into this important issue. In our next episode, we'll explore what happens after the law, how victims can find help through services, hotlines, shelters, and local networks. We will also hear the story of a police officer specifically trained to respond to gender based violence, and how collaboration between NGOs and institutions can make a difference. Stay tuned and join us next time on A New Perspective.